You're listening to the Fed and Fearless podcast. On today's episode, I'm chatting with Jill Coleman of JillFit about how to practice moderation over perfectionism in both fitness and your business. So stay tuned. Welcome to the Fed and Fearless podcast. I'm your host, Laura Schoenfeld, a registered dietitian, nutrition business coach, and online entrepreneur with over 10 years of experience in online business. And I'm here to show you everything I've learned about creating a life and a business that nourishes you. On this podcast, we'll talk about the lifestyle habits, practical strategies, mindset shifts, and leaps of faith required to build a healthy body, a powerful mind, a strong spirit, and a successful business. Hey there, welcome back to the Fed and Fearless podcast. I'm Laura Schoenfeld, your host as always, and thank you so much for spending this time with me. I always love to hear how this podcast is changing your life, changing your business, changing the way you approach health. So I'm so glad that you are hanging out with me and getting lots of new knowledge and tools for growing your life and business. So we have a jam-packed episode for you today. It's with a friend of mine who I've known about for close to a decade, possibly a full decade now, in the online fitness space. And our lives and businesses have paralleled each other in very interesting ways. And now we're actually in a mastermind together through our coach, James Wedmore. So that's how we got to know each other more personally. And I was so excited to have her on the show today to share her wisdom about moderation. So my guest today is Jill Coleman, founder of JillFit and JillFit.com. Back in 2010, Jill started JillFit as a daily fitness and nutrition blog when she was a full-time personal trainer and group fitness instructor working 70 plus hours a week. Armed with a personal training certification and a master's degree in nutrition, Jill got home late from the gym and stayed up all night blogging. She also took on one-on-one fat loss coaching clients. Fast forward 18 months and JillFit had grown to a six-figure online fitness brand with 5 fat loss coaches and over 100 virtual clients. After investing in her very first business coach in 2012, Jill quit her in-person training and moved fully online. Followers and other professionals began asking how she was doing what she was doing, and as a result, Jill started sharing business tips, tools, and strategies. That same year, she launched her first business mentorship, Best of You Business, and did her first 5-figure launch. Since then, JillFit has grossed over $6 million in revenue, and more importantly, has helped thousands of health, fitness, and nutrition professionals start and grow their online businesses so they can quit their 9-to-5s and create the time freedom, autonomy, and fulfilling careers that they've always dreamed of. So Jill's been through it all. She's been online for a while. Like I said, back in 2010 was when her blog started. So we were right around the same time because I started my blog in 2011. And it's just been so cool to watch her evolution over the last decade from a fitness trainer to a business coach and everything in between. And I know you guys are really going to love the conversation today because it's really a glimpse into how Jill and I approach business and life and health, knowing that perfectionism is not the thing that's going to give us the best results. The moderation approach is something that we both started out more focused on in the health space, but then have now translated it into the way that we approach business for ourselves and for our clients. So we just had a great conversation, lots of different things covered, and I know you're going to get a ton of value from it. And if you don't know Jill already, I would strongly encourage you to go follow her on social media because she's super inspiring and has a ton of value to share, especially if you're an online health entrepreneur. All right, so I'm so excited to welcome Jill Coleman to the Fed and Fearless podcast. All right, everybody. Well, I am so excited to have with us on the show today, Miss Jill Coleman, aka JillFit. I almost said JillFit. I'm like, that's not actually your name, but I feel like you probably almost go by that in your day-to-day life. So
yeah, it's interchangeable. Yeah, my family calls me JillFit. Oh it's totally fine. Yeah,
that's great branding. I will say it's very effective. So
it's very simple to remember.
Yeah, and something that I would have mentioned in our introduction to Jill is that I've actually been like just a follower of Jill, probably a good at least 8 years now. I'm thinking it was longer. So it's really, really interesting just to see how we went from me following her, like just, as someone that I was interested in watching as far as business is concerned, almost booked a ticket for a retreat that she was running. And now we're in a mastermind together. So it's really cool how it's like, you never know what's going to happen in life.
I know. And I feel like you and I were connected. I mean, we've been connected for years, but I feel like when you and I both started, I know you've been doing this like a decade, and it just was such a different landscape back then. It was very big on blogging. Twitter was big. I think we were friends on Twitter for a long time. So yeah, it's been so fun to see just the evolution of the space. And then now being in the same mastermind together and running similar businesses, but different. And, just how we kind of go about things. And just, it's been so fun for me to get to know you and get to know your business and reach out to you like, as a peer and be like, how did this go? What are you using for this? And it's been really fun to be at the mastermind and have that too. Because not everyone in the mastermind gets the health space. There's only a handful of us. So you guys are always definitely resources for me.
Yeah. And it does tend to be for sure a different way of approaching business that you have to do, which is one of those funny things for me that I have to kind of keep a little bit of a foot in both spaces at all times, because you can't just like imitate what all the business coaches are doing. You have to do things a little bit different. So for our audience who may not know you, the 3 to 5 of them who have never heard of you before, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into really the online fitness space? Because I do think there's a really big difference between getting into fitness and then getting into the online business and fitness space. There's, I look at fitness actually as maybe even more challenging to get into the online space than nutrition, because with nutrition, it's like you really can just talk to people and it's totally fine. But I feel like having worked with a trainer myself for the last 6 years, it's hard to imagine getting that same kind of experience with an online program, which I know you've perfected the art of supporting people online. So can you talk a little bit about how you got into online fitness training?
Yeah. I mean, I think like a lot of fitness people, and I love that you said you kind of have to keep a foot in both spaces. At JillFit, still probably 20 to 25% of our revenue does come from fitness and nutrition programs, just direct to consumer, but it's context, right? So when someone goes, oh, I want to hire a business coach, am I going to hire just a run of the mill business coach who can be great, or someone who understands my industry? And so I think, for you, you're an RD and your people see you as like, okay, Laura understands our space. She understands the kind of clients. And I think there's a lot of validity to that. So same thing with me fitness. I was one of those like lucky people who just loved fitness, exercise, never could have dreamt of doing anything else. Went to school for exercise science, got my master's in clinical nutrition. And then I ended up just being a personal trainer for over a decade. And it was great. And we get into this job, and sure, it's same with, RDs and nutritionists, is that you want to help people. But what ended up happening was I was helping a lot of people, and I was helping them very early in the morning, very late at night. And I was essentially working 70 to 80 hours a week in the gym, loving what I was doing, but really feeling hamstrung by the schedule. And if you have ever, if you're listening to this and you've been a trainer, group fitness instructor, chances are you've had the experience of a lot of scarcity in our industry, especially within the gym industry, right? There's a lot of box gyms. There's a lot of, they go out of business a lot. Owners are always worried that trainers are going to leave with all their clients. And there's just a lot of scarcity. It's sort of a revolving door. And that's how I was, very much operating in scarcity, taking whatever money I could, working all hours of the day, had no boundaries around my clients. But I looked around and I've been doing it for a long time. And I was like, you know what, I'm good at this, and even though I was charging pennies, I was still a sought after trainer. And this was in 2010. I had just got my master's in nutrition. I was doing a lot of fitness competitions, and I decided I didn't want to compete anymore because it was just so, I was really obsessed with food and obsessed with my body and dieting and things like that. And I was having a lot of conversations with clients, and I was like, you know what? I feel like I'll just start a blog. I feel like that's what everyone did in 2010. It was like, you just start a blog,
yes,
having no idea what it was going to turn into. But I knew that I had a lot to share from my in-person experiences being in the trenches for as long as I was. So I started just sharing little recipes and, meal prep tips and things that I was doing with my competition prep and my competition clients. And within about a year and a half, I actually blogged every day for 2 years. It was wild. I think I didn't have a lot of like mind-blowing ideas. I didn't identify as someone who was really smart, but I was like, I can be consistent. I can at least do this. And back in 2010, sort of the golden age of blogging, a lot of people are reading long form content. So we grew a really loyal readership really quickly. And so I brought on 5 additional coaches and we just started doing one-on-one coaching at a distance. So I didn't know anything about internet business, didn't know anyone who did it. I didn't even know it was a thing really. I was like, I guess I could take someone's money over the internet. They can PayPal me some money and I can just give them a meal plan and I can give them a workout program over, Microsoft Excel or whatever. And we just were getting great results for our clients, sharing a lot of testimonials on the blog, had 5 coaches, and all of us got to the point of being 100% maxed out with our clients, our one-on-one clients, charging very little. And everyone was maxed out and I just didn't know where to go from there. And that was when I hired my very first business coach. And I was like, how else do I make money? Because we literally have no time. So in addition to being at the gym all the time, I was coming home and writing meal plans and writing workout programs until 1 a.m. Something had to give. And when I hired my first business coach back in 2012, everything shifted for me, like group coaching programs, leveraging my time, charging what I was worth, creating courses, things like that. So it just sort of became an evolution. And then I quit all my in-person training with like about 2 years into JillFit and went completely online.
That's amazing. And I'm chuckling about the whole back in 2010. I started my blog in 2011 and I was in grad school. I was like, I'm just going to talk about, at that time it was paleo, ancestral health stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so funny because I feel like in a weird way, it was so much less pressure back then. I don't really feel like there was quite the level of like strategy involved. Maybe for some people, but I really feel like back then a lot of it was just like, I'm just going to show up and share what I am thinking about and, come up with some helpful content. And, for people who, like you said, stayed consistent, here we are today, right? So
there wasn't I agree with you. I don't think there was a lot of pressure only because I don't think we knew what it could be. I think right now we just are, and I kind of feel for those who are starting now. I know you work with beginners. I do too. Beginners to online business. I do sort of feel for them because there wasn't this so much of a focus on like the numbers and like making 10K months and having a 7-figure business and having 100,000 followers. And there just wasn't a lot of numbers back then. It was like, I remember doing little launches at the time and I was like, wow, I just made $250. I can't believe I just made that. So, I did a lot of like little launching and I always just felt so grateful. I had no idea if 5 people would buy or 50 people would buy, but I remember just feeling so excited, like, this was 100% profit. Someone just, paid me $25 while I was walking, the aisles at Target. So everything felt so abundant. And even back then, I don't know if you feel this way too. I still feel like it felt saturated, quote unquote, saturated back then too. It felt like a lot of people were sort of blogging and there was a lot of competition. Now I feel like it's even more saturated and you have to just be not only a great fitness professional or nutrition professional, but you also need to be a good businesswoman. And that's a totally different skill set. I think a lot of people assume that if they're good at coaching or they're good at training, that they're going to be good at business. And obviously we know that that's not always the case.
Yeah. Well, I could definitely imagine that, especially as we both do business coaching, we probably occasionally put a little pressure on ourselves to get those really, big neon flashing results for people. And it's funny that you bring that up because I was thinking, like I used to charge like $497 for a 3-session package. And that was like so exciting to me to get a $500,
Totally.
payment coming through or something. And,
Oh, yeah.
and now it's like, people have, and I do actually think people will get better results in their finances and their personal life and stuff if they charge more. But, sometimes I forget that even starting like that is something that can feel really exciting for people. So
Totally.
Yeah, I feel like for us, I'm trying to think because I was in more of the paleo space and that was like such a weird, clicky, like everyone knew each other and we would go to events and stuff. And, it was definitely.
Yeah. Did you ever go to like Paleo FX?
I did. I actually went to the first one. It was, it was,
that's so cool.
It was quite the interesting experience, but yeah, it was just funny to look back at like, how we were running things back then and how we do it now. And not that it's so different, but like you said, I mean, there's just different expectations. And I know you're really big on social media and I don't even know, did Instagram hardly exist in 2010?
It didn't really. This is back in, Facebook business pages, but I remember just sharing on my personal page, right? And it was just, and everyone was seeing everything too. So you could just post, like I remember I just post my blog and be like, new blog. And people would go and read it, like hundreds of people. And now it's like, okay, no one's going to see that. Second of all, you have to train the click. You can't just be like, new blog up, right? You have to like tell people why they should go and read it, and there's so much diversity in media now, which is great. I think there still is probably a market for long form written content, but I feel like podcasting is the new long form content, so and then we have like this very short form, like, 3 to 7 second, grab someone with a video. And so I think there's a lot more expectations, but it's, especially with now, you can literally, your next door neighbor could have like 1 million followers on Instagram. Whereas back then those numbers were unheard of back then. You were just happy to have a couple hundred people paying attention on your, Facebook page. So I do feel like a little bit just protective of the people who are getting started now, because I feel like they put more pressure on themselves because they're inundated with the marketing and the numbers and whatever. Like Facebook ads, when we started, didn't exist. Now they're scrolling and you're seeing make 10K months or else, it's things like that you sort of take in, and you can easily tap out because it feels sometimes really frustrating to get to that level. Whereas I'm thinking for you and I was just grateful to make any sales. I was like, wow, I can't believe I make money on the internet, but it's a different sort of lens right now.
Yeah. And I know even with podcasting, I don't know how long you've been doing it, but I think I say we, because it was me and a friend, Kelsey Kinney, we started ours at the end of 2013, and I had no idea what we were doing. We were just like showing up and talking about stuff. And it actually got pretty popular. And ironically, my first several business coaching clients were the ones that had been fans of that stuff that we were doing. So
that's cool.
It is funny to look at, that consistency piece and just being like, not worrying about it being this huge, big, flashy start, and recognizing the value in terms of, that consistency, putting stuff out there, experimenting, not putting all this pressure on yourself to have it perfect, and knowing that, sometimes stuff just takes time, right? Like
it does. And I feel like it's, I feel like you have to relax into the process and also realize that you're probably not going to be good at it. And I think that's really hard for people who are historically good at stuff. I mean, I know you and I were similar in that we like to be good. And if we're not good at something, we work at it. So we get there, but it doesn't translate. I think a lot of times people, and I tell this to my business clients all the time, like, you're not supposed to know how to do this stuff, because they beat themselves up. Like, I can't write this. It's not compelling enough. It's, the sales page is dog shit. Like they just, they beat themselves up, when I'm just like, but it's a whole different, it's like learning a new language essentially, and I feel grateful that we have so many more resources now. Cause that's the thing, is I think you can look around now in 2022 and think, it's so saturated. There's so much competition. Everything's been set. Like, you can make excuses. But when you and I were getting started, all we had was Facebook, and we had Facebook personal pages. There was no webinars weren't huge at the time. No Instagram, no Pinterest, no LinkedIn, like no, like all these things that we have now. I feel like, I remember building my website from scratch.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I was spending like tens of thousands of dollars on the website. Now you can just get done for you one on Wix for like less than $100. So, there's a lot more opportunities, I feel like, to really be able to go faster or to do something that probably looks a lot better than my homemade website.
Yeah.
But it's a different standard.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting because, when you and I do health stuff, and I haven't been in the health space as much recently, but I know back when I was, a lot of our focus is about eliminating perfectionism. And I know you have that moderation 365 mindset that you do with I know it's with your health clients. I don't know if that also translates into your business work as well, but it's that idea of, I think there's so many more opportunities to compare yourself to other people now, especially with social media and, how, everyone's seen their highlight reels and everything on Instagram and TikTok and all of that stuff. And I feel like when I think back to when our businesses, which I think we have a similar trajectory as far as timing is concerned.
Yep.
When we first started ours, like, my website looked so bad. Like, it was
terrible.
Awful. And it's funny because I look back on that, I'm like, I didn't even like care, because I wasn't comparing myself to anybody, because it was not a lot of people to compare to. And everybody's websites were kind of meh, right? Like, they weren't that amazing because the design opportunities were not they're totally different now. So,
Mm-hmm,
so do you see that being like a big overlap between the work you do in the fitness space and the work you do with business owners, where it's like you're kind of constantly battling this perfectionism and, everything's got to be right straight off the bat and I can't make mistakes and I have to do it, 110%. Is that something you see a lot of overlap
Totally.
with?
Yeah, and I think, with like any industry, there's a lot of different pockets. So the health and fitness industry, there's a lot of different pockets, right? There's the CrossFit community, and there's the aerobics instructors, and there's the hardcore competitor space, and there's the paleo people, and like the keto crowd and whatever. And I think I came up with the sort of competition group, very hardcore, very perfectionist. So this is sort of coming out of MySpace. I don't know if you were ever on MySpace, but MySpace at the time was like the first iteration of social media, but people didn't know how to use it really. So literally you would only post your professional competition pictures. It was like and I remember being a competitor and gaining and losing the same like 20 to 30 pounds, like multiple times. Because if you were doing a show, you were getting lean and you were getting shredded for the stage. But as soon as you were off the stage, you're binge eating and stuff like that, and you're gaining all the weight back. And I remember when I was quote unquote, not in shape or in off season, I wasn't posting anything. I wasn't talking about how I was struggling with binge eating, and the vulnerability that we see now on social media is amazing, but that did not exist when we started. It was very rare and almost like, like you don't even want to watch like an accident, like someone's like too real on social media back then. It was almost like off-putting. And I think we've really warmed up to this idea of showcasing, letting people see you sweat, really showcasing the good, the bad, the ugly, the struggles, the successes as well. I think we're seeing a lot more of that. I think we still have a long way to go, but I think perfectionism, especially when you and I started, was huge because you just said, well, this is a highlight reel. I'm not going to share anything. It felt so final to share something too. Whereas now if you share something on social media on your stories, it's gone within 24 hours, right? It's just like, especially the Snapchat sort of like, it's like, it doesn't really matter. Everything felt so big and final. So it needed to be the professional photo. It needed to make you look your best. And you didn't want anyone to see you not looking your best or not seeing that, like that best foot forward. And so I feel like we've come a long way with that, but coming out of the competition space, the reason why, or the Moderation 365 movement was really born out of this idea of all or nothing eating. And now this is something that everyone's talking about in terms of like intuitive eating and all these kind of things. And I love it. But back in like 2012, when I started talking about moderation, especially within the competition space, there was a lot of like, this isn't hardcore enough. This isn't good enough. This isn't like, this is soft. This is, this is weak. And I had a lot of those, my own sensitivities around that, like, especially being a competitor. Oh yeah. Like, what, Jill, you like, you have to have chocolate, you have to have a glass of wine, you have to have cheese. Like I really would beat myself up a lot about that. But the problem was that even as much as I wanted to eat clean, remember clean eating, that was a big thing. As much as I want to eat clean and do that and be like the cover of the magazine and like have no issues with food, I was struggling. And I think that was why I was like, as much as I want this to work and as much as I want to be disciplined and have willpower and all these things, I just don't. My physiology is starving. My psychology is exhausted. I got to figure it out. And I didn't want to keep yo-yo dieting. And so I quit competitions completely and started just giving myself what I call like nutritional gimmies, or I call them preemptive cheats, where it's like you have these little nutritional satisfaction and nutritional relief throughout your week. So you're not waiting till Friday to then binge eat. So all of this stuff is really out there now, this idea of moderation and mindfulness and intuitive eating and things like that. But back in 2012, it really wasn't. And so over the course of about 3 years, we sort of perfected this curriculum, and then we launched the certification. So we actually had about 2,500 people go through the actual Gen Pop program version of it to make sure like it actually works. And then after we proved the method, then we made it into a certification a few years ago, and we've certified like almost 200 people in that cert now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like just cracking up because I feel like you and I have so much of this parallel experience, because I think one of the things that kind of helped me actually, even in my business, was realizing that the whole like super low carb paleo thing wasn't working for me. And then I was like, well, maybe there's a reason. It's not just that I am, lazy or have low, not low self-esteem, like self-efficacy or self-control,
Yep.
that kind of thing.
Yep.
Maybe low self-esteem was in there too. But what I will say is I think one of the big the big things I was known for, which I don't know if maybe people remember this if they're longtime listeners, but I was starting to beat that drum of women need carbs, women need more calories, women don't do as well, especially premenopausal women don't do as well on these like consistent, really low carb diets. And I remember this would have been, gosh, it probably was around 2012, 2013 when I was starting to talk about this stuff more consistently. And I remember how controversial it was. And, you know, I had all of these like really big names in the space reaching out to me to do like interviews. Like I remember I was on, do you know who Kiefer is? What's his name? John Kiefer. He was like really, I forget. I don't know if he actually.
He's big in the paleo space.
Well, I feel like he was big in some of like the bodybuilding space too. That's why I thought maybe you would have heard of him. But he had like a huge podcast and he brought me on to debate about carbs for women and stuff. So it was just really.
Yeah, this is like the Gary Taubes. Remember that? Like the Gary Taubes when he was big and it was very much about very low carb and like insulin, like is that like the devil and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yep. And I remember Jillian Michaels actually plagiarized one of my, I'm like not worried about saying that because, you know, whatever, she'll never hear this, but she actually plagiarized one of my articles about carbs for women and all of that. And cause we actually had to communicate with her team about it. And
that's so funny.
She apologized on her podcast, mispronounced my last name, you know, all the good stuff that comes from a celebrity person. But it was really funny because there was so much like shock and awe around that conversation.
You're like, wow, women eating carbs, mind blowing, right? Like, wow, it's such a crazy concept.
Well, and it's funny because nowadays I'm like, I don't really think that would get as much like traction at this point, but I feel like, you know, both of us are kind of talking about things where we were willing to talk about topics that went against the grain, went against what was popular, and to really like stand up for those beliefs that we had. And I don't think they're just beliefs. I mean, I think both of our perspectives are grounded in actual like evidence and physiology and
also
everything.
Like, you know, I think we're a lot more, I think everyone now is a lot more accepting that there's a lot of ways to eat that are effective. You know, I think back then it was very like protocol driven and very black and white and very like there's one perfect way. And I think now we're more accepting of like, yes, there's many different ways to eat. It really comes down to the individual, what works for them, et cetera. And I think I'm excited that we're moving into this more like self-educating, self-responsibility sort of space where instead of someone, and I'm guilty of this, when I started JillFit, we were just giving people meal plans. We were literally making people dumber, you know, because we're like, hey, don't listen to your body, just eat according to this piece of paper at these times, you know? And so we had to go, like, I have embarrassment around that, but it was what it was back then. That was sort of the way that we did things. But what's really interesting about this is now working with a lot of fitness professionals to help them build their business, and some are nutrition professionals and doctors and things like that, but they're very on board with the anti-perfectionism. They're very on board with like, not black and white, you know, definitely don't have to be a perfectionist, like moderation. They're very on board with that when it comes to eating and exercise. But as soon as it comes to business, they're like, I should know how to do it. It should be perfect. I'm like, hey, remember you tell your clients that it's okay to have, you know, a little cheat here and there. Like it's okay to like all these things. You need to apply that to business. The exact same thing, just different outfit. And I feel like, and I'm sure you do too as a business coach, we're always trying to figure out best practices for our clients. Because I look at the ones that just take off and I'm like, what is it about that person that just, it works, and someone else struggles for months and maybe even years to get off the ground and to make it work. And I'm always trying to figure out some best practices. And so much of it does come down to this level of self-trust and relaxing into the process and doing their best, even if it's not perfect. So it's the exact same messaging in the health and fitness space. And it's the exact same messaging when it comes to business. It's funny that I see these coaches not applying it to themselves. They'll say it to their clients, but then they can't internalize it. And so we've had a lot of conversations around that and expectation management and whatever. But I think there are so many parallels within the spaces.
Yeah. Well, and it's ironic because I think a lot of what I talk about with my clients is this concept of making your business work for your life and not like, you know, just being so focused on your business that your life is like crumbling or that your health is crumbling. And I do think, especially with new entrepreneurs, they're excited and they want to get off the ground and they want to like start getting, you know, results and everything. And that's great. But I see a lot of people that are just like, they're burning the candle at both ends, trying to, you know, get the results faster. And it's so funny because again, it's parallel to the health space. if your diet and lifestyle are something that's burning you out and exhausting you and like you're not enjoying it and you just like are like looking forward to the weekend, like you're saying with the diet side of things, is that actually going to help you get the best result? And I think that was something that translated from the health business for me into the business coaching business is you should have these habits. And yeah, I'm all into discipline and like structure and consistency and all of that. And how do we make that actually support the kind of life you want to live rather than it just being these like rules that you follow or, I worked so hard and that's what gives me value and worth and everything. And so it's really interesting because like you said, I see that a lot in my clients where they're so gentle with their clients. They're so like intuitive eating and body positivity and all of that. But then when they're actually, thinking about the work that they're doing with their business, they beat themselves up. They feel like I'm not doing enough. Like, and it's so funny. It's like, it's literally the exact same stuff, the exact same challenges, just with your food and exercise habits versus your work habits.
And I think it's really easy, especially if you are someone who has historically been a perfectionist or you're a recovering perfectionist, you might be able to, quote unquote, cure yourself in one area of your life, but it will translate into a different part of your life if you don't figure it out, right? So I think we see this a lot in, you're like, oh yeah, I'm good with my body, but then you just take and all the affirmation you wanted for your body and your physique, now you're just doing it for business. So one of my sort of like mantras or one of the things I try to remember is really to diversify, the ways in which I derive affirmation. I think as humans, I don't know that it's ever possible for us to get away from wanting to know we're doing a good job. We look for clues that we're doing well or we're progressing in all areas of our life. And I think it would behoove people to think about it that way, is to go like, okay, yes, I want to make sure that I have fulfilling relationships. I'm giving time to my partner, to my kids, to my family, to my friends. And then also, I feel like I'm progressing my business. I can see glimpses of ways in which I'm making progress there. And then also like I have my health and fitness, and maybe it's not a huge part of my life anymore, but it's still an important part, and I can feel good and I can feel healthy. And as I get older, I feel, I've got good energy and I'm sleeping well. It's hard, I think, to be like top notch at everything, but I do think it's possible to be pretty good at most things. And so I think, at least for me, it's kind of taken the pressure off, because I don't have all my eggs in one basket anymore. I'm like, I want to be pretty fit. I want to be pretty healthy. That's obviously a huge value of mine. But then I also want my business to do well. And I want to, I want to know that I'm progressing there and have some goals that I'm working towards. And you and I, we've been doing this for such a long time too. And there's been plenty of times I've just been in a holding pattern. Like, I'm good here, right? Like everything's good. I'm not like trying to make that next level and whatever. So I think if you want to have a long career, you have to figure out how to relax into it. If you want, and if you're listening to this and, you're listening to Laura's podcast and she talks a lot about business and you want to get off the ground, you want to have a successful career, a long career, you can't go 100 miles an hour the entire time. You have to have some moments where you just chill for a little bit and you're like, this is good. And you enjoy your success. I don't think that makes you complacent. I think it makes you pace yourself. I see, and I know you did too. I'm sure a lot of people you and I started with back in the day, they just burned out, right? I don't blame them. It's nothing against their character, but you have to have times where you enjoy this process and it feels easy at times. When people come to me and like, I want to build my online business, I hate social media. I'm like, it is a part of it. Yes, you can outsource and you can, have people help you with writing them, but there's no way to get around. So you need to figure out a way to make it work for you, because it is part of the deal. So how do you relax into this? How do you, and then there's other seasons where you're pushing, right? There's other times where you're like, you know what? My relationships are great. My health is on autopilot. Yeah, I'm going to take some time. And this past year for me, it was a time where I was like, look, I'm ready to really do things differently in my business, which is why I joined James's mastermind. But before that, I was chilling. I was good. I wasn't actively upset. Oh, I don't have a 7-figure business is not good. It's just literally like, I'm good, right? I have a lifestyle. I was, spending more time. I went through like separation, divorce, and I started dating someone else. I want to have fun with him. So, I think it's okay to allow some ebbs and flows, just like you would with your health. Maybe you allow some ebbs and flows with your business, but as a result of that, you get to have a really long career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's funny because when James was asking us, the returning group, which you're part of as well, when he was asking us what our goals were for this year, I was like, honestly, if I could just kind of cruise and get through my pregnancy and postpartum and have a team that's helping me run my business slash officially running it during my maternity leave, I don't need to be like doubling my revenue or something, or even growing it. And I've looked at it for this year because I mean, we have a long year ahead of us, right? It's only April that we're recording this, but I'm like, you know what? I have to be okay with the idea that maybe my business is actually even a little smaller this year, which has never happened before. We've always had growth, even if it was a little bit, right? We've always had growth. And there's that piece of it where it's like, what is the big deal if we don't grow this year or if we shrink a little bit? Like, it's really not that big of a deal. Going through a huge life change, like I have other priorities that are important and more important than, this arbitrary, I have to grow my business every year kind of mindset.
Why?
So it's been an interesting transition because I'm definitely the kind of person that's like, always like, how can I improve? How can I get better? And not to the point where I'm like gonna destroy my health or my life for it. But, being pregnant has been as you have seen the few times we've seen each other in person, the way that my energy has shifted. It's just like, this is just a different season right now. And I have to remind myself constantly that like, we've been doing this for so long. It's just 1 year, right? Like,
and also it doesn't mean that like you're on a backslide. I think we often do that, right? We're like, okay, like especially when I was going through my separation divorce, like I wish, I did keep my business running, but it wasn't a priority, it was just like, I'm phoning it in right for now. Cause I'm dealing with, as much as you, and I'm sure you deal with clients this way too, when they're going through something in their personal life, it affects everything. So the idea that they still are going to be able to give as much time and mental energy to their business, no, it's just not. And don't beat yourself up about it. Like I'm saying that to everyone, you don't beat yourself up. At that time, I remember just thinking to myself, it is what it is right now. It is what it is. It has to be this. I don't know what else to do. It literally has to be this. So I had like a deep level of acceptance. And I think sometimes our perfectionist mindset will think to ourselves, oh, if we make less revenue, that means now all of a sudden either I'm becoming less relevant. I know for me, that has historically been really important for me. Like, revenue is great, but for me, it's more like relevancy, especially as I get older, and having done this for such a long time, I'm going to conferences, and I'm sure you are too, where people are like introducing me as like an OG in the fitness space. And I was like, oh shit, like, am I that? So then there's this relevancy thing of like, how am I continuing to iterate? How am I keeping things fresh? How am I, does everyone just already know me? And so I'm dealing with a lot of sort of that stuff now, doing this for 12 years. But it doesn't mean if you have 1 year of like, I don't know, a little less revenue, it doesn't mean like it's going to keep spiraling, right? You always have tools. And that's why I love being in the mastermind with James and with a ton of other like you and just people who have so much just different ways of doing things. That's been the most valuable for me, is seeing the different ways to approach something. I'm like, this is incredible. I feel like nothing is impossible with the tools that we have and the collective brain share that we have in the mastermind, or any mastermind, by the way. And that's why I'm such a big advocate of masterminds and mentorships. Is like, there's no way you could know how to do everything. But it gives me a real big sense of possibility and time. I've definitely had years where I've made less revenue. It just was what it had to be for then. And then you'll know when it's time to turn around, when you're like, all right, like I'm ready to do something. I'm ready to do things differently.
Well, and I will say this is a great demonstration of the value of being in some kind of community, whether it's a mastermind, a group coaching program, where you're seeing what other people are doing. Because, the fact that Jill and I have been in this space for over a decade, there's a lot of stuff that happens, right? And as Jill was mentioning, she has had some ups and downs and she went through tough times, and she's obviously doing amazing after. It's not like, oh, I got a divorce and that just like crashed my whole business and now I'm like, doing a 9-to-5 job or something. So I feel like when you're new to things, you don't have any of that like experience to go back on and say, okay, everything's going to be fine, even if it's not exactly what I wanted. Whereas when you can see other people that have been doing it longer, have gone through challenges and have come out the other side totally fine, even stronger, even better business than you had before, it just helps you realize like the ups and downs that you experience in entrepreneurship and even in life. It's like, that's all normal and you'll be fine. And it's not the end of the world if things are not exactly the way you want them to be.
And it's not as fragile as you think it is, right? Like, I think that's the thing, is I always talk about at least the personal brand space that you and I are in. as sort of being like a trust business, right? Where people buy from those they know, like, and trust. And so and trust by nature can take time to build with somebody, someone you just bring in from like a paid ad, they just get into your ecosystem. They don't know you quite yet. Every once in a while you have that random person who just like right person, right message, right time, they enroll. But for the most part, people need to be warmed up, and we do too. That's how we are as well. Like someone follows you on social media, they're just trying you on. It's like a first date. Like maybe we'll continue to go steady, maybe we won't. And so you do need to have a level of time to build that trust. But the good news is that it's really hard to lose trust too once you have it, So if you have a period of time where you're going through something, I was able to take my audience through once I got clear on everything with my relationship, I was able to take my audience through that experience. They felt close to me, especially as a blogger. Like people feel really close to you because they know a lot about you. And so being able to take my audience through that and come out on the other side and still have an amazing community of people, but it just looked different, right? Just looked different years later. And so as much as sometimes it takes some time to build the trust with your audience, it also takes a long time to lose it. So if you have to take a back seat or things have to be put on the back burner for a time, like you can still come back and people are always like, well, what are people thinking? I'm like, they're not thinking anything, right? Just start posting again, just start producing again. And people will still be there. They still have a good relationship with you, whether or not you're posting on social media every single day and you're giving value every single day. I think it's a mistake to look at every single action in your business from such a granular lens. It's cumulative, right? No one buys because one single post like knock their socks off. It's the accumulation of everything from all the different touches you've had over the years to the sales page, to the offer, to their financial situation, right? I think all of that kind of thing. And I think we make a mistake of really being too granular sometimes and making everything feel so high stakes. Your business, it's not that fragile. If you've gotten to the point of like sort of breaking through that trust barrier, then people aren't going anywhere. If it's the right offer, they'll show up.
Mm-hmm. And even launching, right? Like a lot of the conversation in our mastermind is around people's launches, and some people do amazing. And then some people have launches that they're like, totally, that sucked. Like that was not what we were hoping for. And I think it's really helpful to see, one bad launch or, one, couple of months span when you're needing to take time off or something. Like I know, James wasn't podcasting for a couple months because of personal stuff that he needed a break. And it's like, yeah, people were a little worried about him. Like, are you okay? We haven't heard from you in a while, but it's not like people just were like, man, that James guy, like he doesn't podcast every day or every week anymore. I don't trust him. I don't follow him. It's like he was able to just kind of come back and be like, hey guys, what's up? And everything was fine, right? So it's nice to have people like that in your life where you can look at and say, hey, like you can take time off, you can take breaks, you can have, down times, and it's not the end of the world. It's not that big of a deal.
Otherwise, why do we have our own business, right? Like that's my whole thing is like literally we get to make the rules. And that's I would rather have autonomy any day of the year than $1 million in my pocket, like every single day of the year. So yeah, I mean, that's just how it works. And if you do have a lifestyle brand, you have a life that you're running, right? It's not like a Target where you show up and you expect the doors to be open at a certain time and they close at a certain time. It's like, this is it's a person, and, it's built on relationships. We're in the relationship business. So, if you're showing up to your audience and you're resentful or you're exhausted or you're, not filling up your own cup, that's not good for your audience either. That's not good for your clients either. So recognizing that, such a big part of business is self-awareness and going like, what do I need? And believe me, the internet's not going anywhere. I tell my girls a lot because there's this feeling of like this urgency, right? I got to take advantage right now. And I will say, I do think there is sort of real urgency within our space. I feel like the earlier you put your footprint down online, the better, even if you're just casually starting to do that. I do think that there's familiarity there that's important, but not everything is such high stakes. And to your point, I think it comes with time and perspective and seeing some of your own mentors and how they iterate over time, and the fact that they still survive and they still thrive and they still are able to, have these massive results. But it's not always all at once, and it's not a clear trajectory. It's not a linear, predictable trajectory, right? And you're in the human business, and humans, life gets lifey. And I think it's important to remember that too.
Yeah. Well, and not to totally switch gears, but I would love to hear, out of personal curiosity, and I'm sure our audience is interested too, How does moderation show up in your life just in general? So, you were mentioning, and I've seen some of your fitness routine and I'm always impressed by it. I'm like, I've been so off, like just not feeling well with pregnancy. And I'm like, man, I'll see people exercising. I'm like, oh, I really miss that. But I know it's like not the time for me to be pushing that right now.
Right.
But between your commitment to fitness and not like you have to look like a Sports Illustrated model, but, staying in good shape and feeling good. And I know, as you've gotten older, that's another big thing, like, because you're in your 40s now, right?
So I turned 40 last year.
Yeah. So I know that like most people think when you're in your 40s, it's like, oh, it's all downhill from there. And I think one of the things you like very well demonstrate is that no, it actually doesn't have to be that way. But between your fitness habits and running a 7-figure business, what does moderation look like for you? Because I think, again, we're peeling back the curtain a little bit, like how do successful people operate, especially ones that maybe have had that history of perfectionism or, had to kind of break out of that idea that everything had to go hard all the time and that's the only way to be successful.
Yeah. I mean, when I was doing competitions and I was eating and exercising obsessed, I had no time or mental energy for anything else, even my relationship. I mean, and anything for my business. And I remember just saying to myself once I started JillFit, all right, Jill, like if you really want to be to be successful, you got to figure out a way to automate your eating and exercise. It literally can't be a full-time job, which at the time it was. I was eating 7 times a day, making food from scratch, eating out of Tupperware, cleaning dishes, like everything. I was at the gym 3 times a day, working out. And I remember just saying like, I got to figure this out. And I also was terrified of just like going off the rails and gaining 50 pounds overnight and what that would look like and my credibility and all those kind of considerations. So that's how moderation sort of started. The idea behind Moderation 365 is that you eat moderately or eat the exact same on Saturday that you do on Monday. That became our tagline. And essentially it's a way to literally decrease the time and mental energy you're spending thinking about food. Because that was my audience. So you kind of came from the paleo space. I was attracting a lot of competitors, a lot of extreme dieters, super advanced exercise people. And I started being like, you don't have to go to the gym for 2 hours. You have to do an hour and a half of cardio. And I was saying it for myself as much as I was saying it for them, because I'm trying to unlearn a lot of these obsessive behaviors at the time. And I started just slowly cutting back on my exercise. I started really actually one of the biggest, and I think your audience will appreciate this. We always hear about like food prep and, you have to be ready if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Yeah. And I had done Sunday food prep every single Sunday for like 8 years. And I was so exhausted and I was so like disgusted with the diet food I'd been eating. And I just couldn't even look at it anymore. And I remember one week I was just like, I'm not doing it, not shopping, not making the food, not doing it. And I was terrified because I'm like, I'm going to be at the McDonald's drive-thru every meal. Like, I don't know how to handle it. And what happened was nothing. It wasn't ideal, but I'd have like protein shakes, protein bars, little takeout salads, still satisfying food, somewhat healthy, not perfect, obviously, but somewhat healthy. And at the end of the week, I was literally like, wow, my clothes still fit. I feel fine. And I was literally like, I'm never food prepping again. So what happened was you needed, or at least for me, and this is what we do for our clients, we actually do this called exposure therapy, which I'm sure you guys have heard of, is we actually help people be in these scenarios that they're really scared of. If they come from an obsessive eating background, we have them go buy that food that they're really scared of having around because they don't trust themselves around it. And we give them some mindfulness practice that we teach, and it's scary for a lot of people, but over time, it sort of takes these foods and these rules that they've put up on pedestals and sort of just brings them down and makes everything just easy and automated. And it takes time, like anything, like mindfulness takes time. But what we found is our clients actually say to us, I just don't think about food at all anymore. And they're almost like it's disorienting because they've just thought about it for such a long time as chronic dieters, that the idea that they're not thinking about it, they think something's wrong. They're like, am I not trying hard enough? Is this not should I be doing more? And I'm like, nope, you have found a way to make your eating work for you long-term. You shouldn't be thinking about food and counting and measuring constantly in your head. It should be part of your life. And I love food and I love delicious food, but it shouldn't be your entire life. And so those are some of the people that we work with. So same thing with exercise. Instead of doing hours and hours of cardio, I started slowly cutting back. to now where I do barely any and I do mostly weight training and same exact experience. Wow, like my clothes still fit. I didn't gain 50 pounds. I'm like, I can handle it. And so you need to create that show of evidence that you're okay. So I don't know how else to say that, except sometimes we throw people into the fire because we're like, we just need to the lion's den. Like you got to figure it out. And sometimes that's what, especially for someone like me who is using exercise and food as a control mechanism, sometimes you got to help them trust themselves more around those things. And so that has been sort of the evolution of Moderation 365. So the curriculum itself and the coaching methodology, it's not for everybody. It's not for like a beginner to nutrition. It's for someone who's like overly dieted, like very like chronic dieted. We actually have an assessment that everyone goes through. And sometimes people don't qualify because they're like, you just need like nutrition coaching. You need like basic foundational education around eating. You're not qualified for this because this is really like almost a food mindset course. We don't give people like, you should eat this instead of this. We don't talk numbers, macros, anything like that. It's more like food mindset. And so, I think for a lot of people, it's given them a sense of hope that they don't have to go through life just obsessing about these things, and they can open up time and space for other joys, like, their family, their friends, their job, their career, their business, whatever it is that they want.
Mm-hmm. So for that mindset shift that you went through, did you ever have to go through that for your business where you literally had to like, ease yourself out of perfectionism, or did that come faster because you had already experienced it in health?
I think it came faster because I was sort of like, I was able to sort of recognize some of the obsessive tendencies. And so I think I'm human. I still get caught up in the numbers sometimes, but then I have to remind myself, and I want to maybe relate to this as well. When you're first getting started, like you and I sort of started around the same time. And right now I run a program called FBA, and everyone's a beginner and everyone starts together. We have like 80 something people in there, like almost 90 people in there. They all start together. And so I think it's really easy to kind of compare to other people because you're all like kind of moving. So if you've ever run like a half marathon or a 5K or something, everyone starts at the starting line together. And then after like a mile or two, everyone kind of goes at their own pace, right? And everyone's kind of going at a different pace. And I feel like in our business at this point, it's incomparable, like I'm just like, everyone's doing a different thing. There's a million ways to arrive at success. So I feel like the pressure for my business to look like something specific isn't really there because there's really no precedent for it, right? I can't look at, as much as I appreciate James and I really look up to him as a mentor, completely different business than what we have, and there's definitely some best practices that I have taken from him and from other mentors, but at the end of the day, it's never going to look the same. And so I think it's been easier in the business, especially having done it for this long, to not compare and to not, because I really feel like I only get caught up in, and to your point about it being a lifestyle business, and this is funny because I see this at the gym. So I live in Southern California, I live in LA, and I go and work out at Gold's Gym at Venice Beach, which is like Muscle Beach. So people are so fit, getting up on stage, carrying around the gallon water jet, like all the things, right? And I can look at those people who are so fit and appreciate their physique, but not want that lifestyle. Like, I'm like, I know what it takes. So I can appreciate it and not feel triggered by it. I can be like, wow, that's an amazing physique. Like, because I know what goes into it, but also at the same time, not wanting to have that lifestyle. And so I think you also have to always evaluate someone else's business. I know people who have 8, 9-figure businesses that work like 1 million hours a week, right? So you have to always filter it through, could I see myself actually having the life that it would take to make that happen? And I think it's possible. Like James, obviously, is it 8 figures now? 8-figure business, and he still has a life and he's figured out that. And I think that's why he's a little bit of a unicorn in the space. But I think once you learn that lesson, you're able to show yourself compassion in a lot of different areas of your life.
Yeah. Well, and I even think with business, a lot of times, even those numbers about like 7 figures, 8 figures, it's like, first of all, you're not keeping all of that, right? And the more you grow your business, the more your expenses grow too. And so, there might be somebody that has a 7-figure business that is only taking home $100K for themselves every year. And it's like, and I'm not saying that's awful, but if you could do the same take-home salary and work half as much, and maybe you don't have those shiny marketing numbers, it's like, well, I'm literally getting the same benefit financially as that person is that's got this, super high revenue business, but has all these expenses, has all this like work they have to do. And I do think James is a great example of someone who does not work that hard to do what he does. So that's why we work with him as a coach, because we're like, show me that. I want to get more of that. But it is something where I have to always kind of step back and say, okay, why am I doing this? not that I love having a business, so it's not like I'm like, I'm just going to throw it out. I don't want to do it anymore. But if I'm ever pursuing certain goals, it's got to be like, okay, but why do I want this? Because if I have to sacrifice the other stuff in my life that I care about, that's meaningful to me to get there, then it's not worth it, right? And so I do think just coming back to personal values and like being really clear about, why do you want your business to make more money? Why do you want to, have a bigger business, whatever bigger means, right? Because bigger can mean so many different things.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with pursuing that. And again, I think it's really exciting to see growth and potential. And we see our friends doing certain things. We're like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. That's possible for me too. And so it's that balance between, not shutting yourself down to say, well, I don't, it's going to take too much work to do that. So I'm just going to not ever want it. But also not getting wrapped up in this like numbers game where it's like, oh, I have to have XYZ results for me to have like a real successful business.
Right.
Because for some of my clients, successful business is bringing in an extra $5,000 a month into their family and working part-time and spending time with their kids, having free time, like, just having that extra spending cash or extra savings or vacation money, that kind of thing. So success looks different to everybody. And I think that's kind of what you were saying with the gym experience, where it's like, that's not what success looks like to you anymore for yourself. And it doesn't mean it's not, maybe that person's quite happy with their lifestyle and that's great, or they're not, and you don't know that. But just being really clear about what do you actually want, and I'm a little on the lazier side. I'm always like, what's the least amount I need to do to get the things that I want, and to have that balance.
I think that's a good way of looking at it, right? That's how I look at exercise too. I'm like, what's the minimum effective dose? And yeah, sure. I think seasonality is an important part of this conversation where, you're getting ready to have a baby, that your family life's going to change. Other times when I was really dialed into like wanting to have a physique goal or a performance goal, yeah, maybe my relationships took a back seat or my career took a back seat. And I think that's fine. I think there's no judgment about it. There's plenty of time to do all the things. I truly believe that there's plenty of time to do all the things, but I think you have to, like you mentioned, really sort of filter it through what does success look like for me? Because I think a lot of people go through life having borrowed goals. I mean, I know I did up until I was like 30. I was like, okay, I got to find the husband, got to find the job, got to find the 401k. Like, I think a lot of people. And then like me, when your life sort of like turns upside down and you go, okay, cool. Now is an opportunity. It's a pause for me to decide, what do I want this to look like? Right. Or I've maybe borrowed what my parents thought it should look like, or school, or a mentor, or my husband, or whatever. And I'm going, yeah, it's an opportunity for me to decide what I want it to look like. And as scary as I think that can kind of be, because there's no script, it's really powerful once you just own it, because then you're confident in what you don't have. That's one of the most important things for me, is to be able to look at some of the people in our mastermind and other people that I look up to who have these incredible success. There's someone in our mastermind who's like $1 million launch or close to it. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. But I'm not like envious or jealous. Like, it's incredible. And I would love to do something like that, but it's literally like, I'm confident in what I don't have because I love what I have. And I think when you have that level of discernment, that to me is what true confidence is being okay with what you don't have. And, so looking at your business and going, yeah, I'm bringing home $5,000 a month for my family. I get to contribute to the household. I get to take my family on vacation, and I work part-time and I love what I do. Like, that's huge success. And so I agree with you. I think you need to take the time, and maybe that doesn't happen without, I notice at least with beginners, there is this sort of like rat race at the beginning of like, I got to get to a certain, and I'm like, where are we going? Where are we going to, Yeah. So you have to sort of to take a step back to decide where is the goalpost? Because I think the goalpost can keep moving too.
Yeah.
Same thing with your body, right? You get lean and then you're like, maybe I could lose a couple more pounds. Maybe I could lose a couple more pounds. Like, so if you have this constant finish line that's moving, and I think you could do that in anything. So at some point you have to just be like, this is great. I'm happy now. I feel great. I still have goals, but I'm also good here.
Yeah.
And if I never do anything else, gosh, I love this.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny you mentioned that, because it's like, for me, the lifestyle that I have right now is definitely one that I chose. And sometimes when I see like you, for example, posting on the beach in Southern California, I'm like, oh, there's a part of me that's like, that was the life I thought I was going to have. Cause I actually, way back in the day, both of us actually lived in Bondi, which is so random, but lived in Australia for a while and was like, yeah, I'm going to end up in California and like live on the beach, that kind of thing. And I think part of me is like, I still love the concept, but practically, and also based on the life that I've built here in North Carolina and my family's here and my husband and my church family, and now we're having a baby. And it's like, I chose all of that. So I'm happy with it. And sometimes I have to kind of be mindful of like when I see other people's lives, or like our friend Jess, like, then traveling around in an RV and stuff. I was like, that looks so cool.
Right.
But it's okay. It's okay that like my life isn't everything, right? Because nobody can have everything. And so I think just getting really clear about like, yeah, living in Southern California looks amazing. And I wouldn't be mad if somehow we ended up there. But I also really love where we live and there's benefits. And, I have a, very much lower cost of living in North Carolina. So that's a huge benefit. Lower taxes, all the fun stuff. So it's just something where it's like, you can look at somebody else's life and say, that's amazing for them. And it's okay that that's not my life. Because I have these other things that I chose and those are great, right? So it's just interesting because some of the stuff you mentioned, I'm like, yeah, those are the things I'm pursuing. And it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just means that's what I pursued. And there's sacrifices you have to make that kind of stuff happen. And so, but I will say,
there's no shortage of things to covet, right? There really isn't. If that's where your head is at, right, you'll find plenty of reasons to be dissatisfied with your life if you are looking for them, right?
Yeah.
Plenty of ways to feel insecure or whatever if you go looking for them. Or you could start looking for reasons why the life that you've created is amazing.
Yeah.
And why you actively choose it. Like you said, you could easily be like, I'm here. And I lived in North Carolina. North Carolina is great. I was there for 15 years. And really the reason I moved out here was I was single. So I was like, well, I'm not going to stay in the same small town that my ex-husband lives in. So where else can I go? And where are the fitness people? And so it just made sense, but life has a way of challenging you to really own your decisions and really think about what's important to you, whether you're actively pursuing personal development and whatever, or life gives you, a series of things that puts these opportunities in front of you. I think if you're listening to this podcast, obviously you're interested in introspection and personal development or, bettering yourself in some way. So I'm sure those things for your listeners, I'm sure they're already doing those things, but it's a good reminder.
Well, and as I know, from personal experience, nothing's ever permanent, right? So it's like living somewhere now might change in the future. Being in a relationship or not in a relationship can change. Having kids, not having kids. Like, I mean, I guess you can't really, we'll say not having kids isn't really like, you can't go backwards in that way. That's why I waited.
I don't know. I don't want this kid I just had.
I think I'm done being a parent.
I think that's pretty permanent.
That is why I waited until I was 35 to have a kid. I wanted to be real sure about it, but it is something where I think sometimes people make things too permanent and they don't think about the fact that life changes and
totally,
the way it is now doesn't mean it's going to be that way forever.
Yep.
Well, Jill, I could probably talk to you for another couple of hours. So in the interest of time, and we'll have to have you back on the show, we can wrap things up. But I'm sure our listeners would love to connect with you. And I know that you said before we started recording that you have an opportunity to work with you coming up in a certain area of your business, because I know you have lots of different offers that people can potentially take advantage of. So how can people either connect with you or take another step with you if they want to get some help on what we talked about today and incorporating that into their own lives?
Awesome. Yeah. So thank you for that. And if you guys are interested in learning more about the Moderation 365 method, it's just Moderation 365 on Instagram. We have a lot of content on there, and basically everyone who we're following on that account is a certified coach. And so if that's interesting to you, like learning more about sort of, I guess it's intuitive eating, but it's our sort of methodology. But we are also launching a brand new workout program called Physique 40. So like you mentioned, I'm in my 40s now. And so last year we did an amazing sort of 40-day fitness program leading up to my 40th birthday. We had about 1,300 people doing it. This year we're doing it again, brand new program. Super excited for that. So Physique 40, it does start, everyone's starting as a group on June 6th. It's an a 40-day accountability program. So it's super like low barrier to entry. I think I don't know if you're this way too, but I've been talking to a lot of people feeling overwhelmed, drained, just not having a ton of bandwidth for like a ton of learning and implementing and like Zoom calls and stuff like that. So it's very low barrier to entry, accountability, workouts 5 days a week. And yeah, so if you guys are interested, feel free to, that's up on my Instagram as well. You can go to JillFit.com. We just did a rebrand, brand new website. All of the offerings are on there, including both the business offerings and the health and fitness offerings too. So looking forward to you guys.
Well, we will link to all of those in the show notes for this episode. And I won't be able to join for June, but I'm sure once my postpartum limitations are off, I'm going to be looking for some some fitness help. Because I'm like, I have a Peloton and a home gym, and the Peloton's good for like the low intensity cardio stuff, which, you know, for preparing for labor is actually not a bad strategy. But I'm just like, I'll see people out running, and not that I'm not even a runner, but I was saying to my husband the other day, I was like, I just miss being physically capable. Like even just getting out of chairs right now is hard. So I'm excited to get back into that once.
Plenty of time.
My body is mine
Fitness
again.
isn't going anywhere.
That is true.
The weights aren't going anywhere. The Peloton's not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. Yeah, plenty of time to do all that. Well, thank you so much for having me and appreciate this. And if you guys are interested in just chatting, my DMs are always open. But yeah, thanks so much. This is a fun conversation.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thanks to all of you for hanging out with us. We'll see you here next week on the Fed and Fearless podcast. Take care, everybody. Hey there, Laura here again. Are you a health or nutrition entrepreneur who wants to start or grow an online business? And are you feeling stuck, frustrated, or even downright scared to take the next step towards your dreams of entrepreneurship? Trust me when I say that I've been there before and that you are not alone. I've been running my own online business since 2014, and I started my website and blog just about 10 years ago. And over the past decade, I've learned a lot and made a lot of mistakes when it came to creating the multi-six-figure business I now run today. And if there's one thing I've learned since starting my business, it's that you don't have to figure out how to transform your knowledge, expertise, and passion into profitable online courses, digital products, and memberships on your own. Contrary to popular belief, becoming an in-demand expert in your business isn't about being egotistical or selfish. It's about having a deep commitment and a burning desire to help others. And if you're not growing your business successfully, there are hundreds and maybe even thousands of people out there who are missing out on the opportunity to get the amazing help and support that you were born to provide. You're here for a purpose, and if helping people improve their health by running an online business is one of your purposes, then I have an exciting opportunity that'll help you build your business even faster and easier than ever before. My world-class business coach, James Wedmore, is going to be opening the doors soon for his game-changing online program called Business by Design, which helps struggling service-based coaches and course creators transform their businesses from the inside out so they can experience the time and financial freedom they desire while having a bigger impact on the world. In this one-of-a-kind program, James shows you exactly what keeps most business owners stuck and struggling and coaches you through the 5 key areas that you need to focus on to overcome whatever is standing in the way of your success. His program also provides a wealth of how-to and instructional content that will help you execute every important task in your online business, from running a launch to hiring your first VA and everything in between. I consider BBD my business Bible, and I've seen health and nutrition entrepreneurs become wildly successful in their online businesses through applying what James teaches, both from a strategy and a mindset perspective. And these kinds of results are possible for you too. Now, if you don't know James Wedmore, he's a self-proclaimed serial entrepreneur who has built multiple 7- and 8-figure businesses in multiple niches. He's also one of my favorite coaches and mentors that I've ever worked with, and he's helped me completely transform my mindset around business so I can grow my income and my impact while also working less and enjoying life more. The financial and time freedom I've experienced has been life-changing, and I want you to have that experience in your business as well. So if you're ready to start taking charge of your business and your life, go to lauraschoenfeld.com/BBD waitlist to learn more about James's amazing online program, Business by Design. And if you choose to join BBD under me using one of my affiliate links, you'll also receive bonus coaching from me, plus additional training content covering tools and strategies that are specific to nutrition and health entrepreneurs who want to start, grow, or scale their business to 6 figures and beyond. These are my gifts to you absolutely free when you enroll in Business by Design using my affiliate link. So don't miss your chance to learn the business strategies that have truly changed my life and the lives of thousands of other online entrepreneurs. It's time to step into the role of confident CEO in your online health and nutrition business. And I can't wait to support you on your journey to becoming the successful health entrepreneur you were born to be. Go to lauraschoenfeld.com/BBD waitlist to get on the waitlist, and you'll be the first to find out when the doors to Business by Design are open.